all the way from Canada, Mr. Dick Moffat, who is the purveyor over there at Dick Moffat's Spreadsheet blog. Dick, just to start off with, greetings, and what did you do before you got into spreadsheets?
I spent 10 years as a commodity trader.
Oh.
Where you buy and sell corn and soybeans and trade currencies and all that stuff. And my own line was, they say that commodity traders sleep like babies. They wake up in the night screaming. So I got tired of doing a job which was 99% BS. It was like, why'd the market go up? Because more buyers and sellers, stuff like that. So I just walked away, and I bumped into a thing called VisiCalc. And so VisiCalc ended up catching my attention one day when I was at one of my clients. And by the time I drove home, my life had changed completely. I decided that was what I was going to do for a living. And then shortly after that, Lotus 123 came up. And so I became a world's expert on 123. I mean, fundamentally, I was like an idiot savant when it came to spreadsheets. I was just very quickly very good at it. And luckily, somebody called me to help at a client they had where they knew more than he did. And so I went there, and I worked for that client for 20 years as a consultant. That was the biggest brewery in Canada. So that was kind of a good start. It made me think, right? So then I quit the grain business and became a consultant in 1985. How many of you guys were born then? No, sorry. But
yeah.
I was born.
You joined the Navy.
I was born that year.
Oh, there you go, George. So anyway, and then it goes from there. It's a fairly long story, obviously, so I won't bore you with it. But it involved Lotus, and then it evolved to Windows 3.0 came out, so I evolved to Excel, and then Access came out, and I one of the guys at Microsoft, who's still a good friend of mine, gave me a copy of Access and said, learn this. And my dad needs an application developed, so I started before version 1, and I'm still doing it because I keep asking myself, do people really need this? Yes. The problem lately is getting people to realize they need it, but that's something we can talk about later, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, boys, right?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Dick, you've seen quite a few business cycles. Then, would you mind talking a little bit about the leap that you made from doing consulting, through all the different spreadsheet programs to putting your own shingle out on the internet and starting your own blog? What facilitated that?
Wow. A friend of mine, Simon Murphy, had a blog, and his Smurf on spreadsheets. He's an Englishman.
Yes.
And he's a really good guy. And so he talked to me. He said, why don't you have a blog? So I decided to have my own blog, and that's what I did. But my idea of a blog is this is my opinion on things, as opposed to this is how you do stuff, right? Which is why I'm not an MVP, because I don't give stuff away, right? So that's literally the idea of an MVP is you have to answer questions on the internet. I go on and I talk about issues, right? And my theory is people should figure some things out for themselves, but that's all right. So anyway, that's where I got into a blog.
Wow.
Plus, I had opinions.
So you share what's an opinion?
Well, for example, when I started out, my goal was to promote best practices in Excel and in Access, and to promote the whole entire idea of a professionalism in those technologies, and how important it is for our clients, and how important it is for us to be good at what we do, and that it's a lot more than just tips and tricks. It's a whole, it's a career, it's a professional. And then about 8 years ago, I evolved into the anti-office, not the anti-office, but I didn't like what Microsoft's direction. And so frankly, a lot of my blog was saying I don't like this that they're doing, I don't like that they're doing. I've always been constructively critical. I will always, like, I'm a big fan of Microsoft. I'm a huge fan of Excel and Access. I just don't like the way they've handled the franchise, and that's what my blog has been about largely over the last few years. And will continue until they wake up and realize what an incredible piece of technology they have sitting there on everybody's desk around the world being underutilized. And I don't know what to do about it. I mean, I know what to do. I made a decision to be a thorn in their side at personal risk, right? So I have somebody start my car for me every morning. Right?
So what is something you think about is how has Microsoft contributed to the underutilization of this powerful tool?
Well, they're obsessed with selling licenses, and for the last 5 years, and so the whole thing has been. Their whole focus was with Access, and with Access it was end user, turning Access into an end user tool, which right off the bat I said, are you kidding me? Are you serious? And then with Excel it was, we want to promote to the lowest common denominator. We want to sell Excel, and the evidence of that is that they're now shipping Office for Windows with a version of Excel on all these devices that doesn't have macros in it. And to me, VBA, every spreadsheet has to have some VBA on it if you want somebody else to use it other than yourself. And they really don't care about spreadsheets designed by people like us for use by people who don't know Excel. That's a model. Why would they have built all that functionality in VBA into Excel if at one time they didn't get that? But in the last few years they've completely forgotten that. And they may not even deny that. So I believe Excel is an end-user tool. It's a great end-user tool. But I believe, and my blog has pointed this out, that that companies are using it for more and more rather than less and less, because IT won't do the departmental solutions anymore. And the only tool they have left is Excel. And yet huge numbers of people are doing it. A lot of people are doing crappy Excel spreadsheets, not because they're bad people, but because they have other jobs and they're basically amateur Excel developers.
Yeah, compelled to go rogue.
Right. So I would like to see a class of developers who are Excel professionals who can help them. But again, as my blog pointed out about procurement and preferred vendors, it's getting harder and harder to get into the corporations that need us. Sorry, Rick, I guess I got going there.
No, it's all right.
That's all good.
I've got more questions. I don't know if anybody else have questions.
I do have a question.
It's nice. I can see Rick rolling his eyes. That's really kind of handy.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So, you also have your own consulting business. So, can you tell us a little bit about, what prompted you to really? I know you said that you went into VisiCalc, but what really made you want to go out on your own and be your own boss? Was there what do you enjoy about it? So just talk about. Sorry, I know I'm rambling on because I love all these things.
No, I understand the question.
But yeah.
Why did I do this? Why did I do this, and why have I done it for 30 years? It's because when I was in the grain business, I did an awful lot of mathematics using a calculator. And then when I first saw the VisiCalc, in the grain business, you buy something here, and you move it to here, and then you dump it into a boat, and then you move it to there, and then you take into account exchange rate, and then you sell it at that price. If any one of those factors in the middle changes, it's going to change your price at the destination. And I used to do that all manually. As soon as I saw a spreadsheet, I could say, oh, the exchange rate changed. I changed one value, there's my answer. And that is what changed my life. That was it. I said, this is it. And then I thought, every business in the world can use this. And I was right.
Did your jaw drop when you saw it? Were you like,
absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, in 30 minutes driving home from this place, it changed my whole entire life, and it's never been the same since. And it's kept me gainfully employed for all this time.
That's crazy. We had Dan Filestra, who was one of the one of the three guys, first guys involved in VisiCalc about a month and a half or so ago. Mm-hmm. And his comment was, whenever they first brought it to one of their professors, it kind of had his pulse on the industry over at, I think it was at MIT, I think. Mm-hmm. Said, or maybe it was Harvard. Said, what do you think about this? He was very he basically said, this isn't going to sell for the most part. My reaction, I would hope, would have been kind of like yours. My jaw would have dropped and said, "Oh my God, how does the professor not see that?"
Right. Yeah, because he's sorry, but yeah, I know a lot of great professors. Don't get me wrong, all your professors out there. No,
but
he was tenured. He was tenured. Right.
I'm curious. I want to go back when you said that the idea about access as an end user's tool, and you said, oh really? And want to ask you about why is it so hard to get into corporations, as you were saying?
Oh, because over the last 5 years or so, well, first of all, they've always hated spreadsheets. Right? IT has always hated spreadsheets because they can't control it. They consider it a virus. They also considered access a virus, right? So that is not new. That is, like, for years, what do you do for a living? I do spreadsheets for a living. Right? It was embarrassing, right? Then there was about 10 years where it wasn't embarrassing, and now it's back to being embarrassing again. And what has happened is IT doesn't like spreadsheets, has to control everything. Sorry, IT, it's a fact. And once business managers used to have their own money they could spend on people like us, and now IT manages all that. You can't, right? Plus, IT's put in preferred vendors at the large corporations. Right. So the big consulting firms are in there, and we can't. And the big consulting firms don't care anything about Excel. They have no interest in doing work in Excel. Even when you talk about Microsoft's BI, they still glaze over, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no way you can really get through the cracks unless you were already inside. And that's fine, because you can talk to a lot of guys out there who say, oh, I got lots of business. It's because you've had that client. In 1994 that accessed OLAP from Excel, and it was awesome, and they used it for 4 years, and then they merged with Travelers, and everybody I worked with was gone, including my app, right? And that's over and over. When you work for 30 years, that happens over and over and over again. Yeah. So, and that's fine, because I always have had an ongoing, because I've worked for a lot of companies, if you saw my resume. Which actually is a problem now because I'm overqualified. That's the other thing. People used to never say you're overqualified. They always hired me because I was the best at what I did that they knew. And now they look at me and go, oh, A, you're old, and B, you're overqualified.
Wow. Well, but let me say, okay, so I've worked with the smaller businesses where, a lot of people wear a lot of hats, the owner see some merit in Excel, and they can make the decision. So I haven't experienced the enterprise since I was laid off in 2008.
All my business has been enterprise.
Okay.
I avoid small business.
Okay. And is there a reason?
They don't pay.
No, they don't. I knew you were going to say that. They come in and they say, oh, well, you'll do this, and, maybe down the line we can trade some equity or help a brother out, help us out.
Or you'll build something for them. You'll build something for them that satisfies their needs now, and then they change, and then they go, oh, but you should have put it. It's terrible. It's something to do with the mindset. It's a question. They just don't have the money, and the problem is I'm a business person. We're all trying to make a living just like they are.
Right,
And Excel has never been considered a professional enterprise.
Well, I don't know how much I can disagree with you because, we talk from our own perspective, and I've preferred working with the smaller businesses.
Good for you.
Oh.
Good. That's great. But as long as you got paid.
Yeah, because for one thing, I don't feel like I've got to twist arms. My best clients have been those who have some sense of what Excel can do. True. Enough to know I know it can do more, but I can't figure it out. So then they call Oz, they call somebody else, and get a solution in and write the check.
Well, this is the thing, write the check. The other thing about large business, and anybody who's a small business person, I don't mean to insult you, but when you're a consultant, you work for a large business, you can add zeros on the end of everything you do because right? And then their checks aren't going to bounce. Lately, the big issue is they won't pay you for 120 days. That's the latest thing, right? I mean, that's another problem. Or they'll take forever to process your PO, and you won't be able to start for 6 months, right? That kind of stuff. That didn't used to happen. I used to get a call, and I'd be on my way to Labrador to a mine the next day. That kind of stuff, right? To do a big project. Nowadays, it's much more difficult. Like really, large businesses are a problem because they need Excel so badly, but they don't have, there's no way to help them. That's what I see. And maybe small businesses.
Oh, you're saying large businesses.
Yeah, they need Excel. And look at all the work Microsoft put into Excel, all the Power Pivot, all the Power Query, all this extra capability. And it's all underutilized.
That's fascinating, because when I think back to being at an enterprise and with an IT department and everything, IT was not, you know, this heaven for me because my problems were too small.
Yes, but now once you start tapping into the corporate data, suddenly you pop up like whack-a-mole, and they see your head and whack.
Right?
Right?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm small and quick and durable.
Yeah.
and yes, they well, how did you get this? How did you do that? Yeah, so I'm aware for you. I don't disagree with you there, but where I'm agreeing with you is about I did need help. My 3-day process, because I didn't know about VLOOKUPs and pivot tables, there was nobody to help me getting any kind of training. That that wasn't going to happen. That's IT stuff. Go to IT. Well, they said they can help me in a week. That's not going to work. So I get what you're saying there about the help is needed, but how do you get it in there?
That's what I'm trying to figure out now.
Yeah.
And like my feeling is that I'm not being pessimistic. I just think it's a real hard sell right now, and I think that there's only one company that can change that, and they're not going that direction right now. We know who they are, right?
Yeah.
And
it's in their interest, but they they have other fish to fry.
So Dick, would you mind talking a little bit, since you've seen quite a few of the cycles, and when we talk with people who do this for a living, they're consulting for a living. I'm thinking about people like Kevin Jones and Zach Barisi, and people who are just doing development, day in, day out, and they've been doing it for a while. Some of the first things they say is, they basically have their own approach to how they do development. They have their own best practices, and they have this that they bring to the table right off the bat. What is your general approach recently, or that you've developed over time to develop?
Okay, my number one approach is to develop a solution that works, and that they don't have to call me every 3 weeks to say, oh, by the way, can you fix this? Can you fix that? Second approach is I ask them a whole lot of stupid questions, because I got to understand their business, and that's one of the hardest things. Is I'm not a miner. I'm not a banker. I'm not. I don't run a pharmaceutical company. I have to understand their business so I can build a solution that satisfies their process needs in such a way that they can run it themselves without having to call me every 2 days to change something. That's my approach, right? And then second of all, in terms of best practices, I've developed skills, and I apply those skills all the time. You can make an argument that my solutions look the same. Well, there's a reason for that, is that when I go back to them 10 years later, I know what I did. But I'm not stuck on what I did 10 years later. I'm always progressing, but I'm progressing from a base, right? So I'm adding more skills incrementally, but best practices to me means consistency. Like I've always told people on Access, on their forums, it doesn't really matter if you're compliant with some design theory, as long as when the user goes from this form to that form to that form, they look and feel the same. The buttons that do the macro stuff, like the close and the save and print, are all in the same spot and all that, right? right?
Yeah.
So there's your answer to your question, right? Plus the biggest one is the asking of dumb questions and really understanding their business process. And they don't always give you time to do that. And that's where experience comes in. That's when you can sort of figure it out. Once you've done a whole lot of these things, you can sort of start and then fill in the gaps later, which is an argument for being old, right? Do you know what I mean? Because, I mean, experience is everything. Does that make sense, guys?
Absolutely.
You're speechless.
I believe you have one more question, then we're going to move on.
Yeah. Okay, so my question is, as Excel develops, it is getting this Power Query and all. It starts to look and feel like a database in some ways, and a lot of people don't like that. Is it get a real database? Don't fool around with Power Query, Power Pivot, all that stuff. So what do you say about that?
Well, you're absolutely right. You should use a big database for collecting data, but you use Excel for analyzing data, right?
Okay.
And for anything that's relatively small that you could keep in a spreadsheet. But it's always better to have your data in a database. My job has been to pull data into Excel and analyze it and produce reports. But I do some solutions where they put the data in Excel because that's what they want and that's all they have. And I tend to build them using data tables, using data validation, structured references. I use, if I have to, I use VBA code to manage it. So I prevent giggle, right? I do everything I can in Excel to prevent giggle. And if it's a multi-user environment, I think about that. And how am I going to do that with my data in Excel when I'm going to have multiple people opening it? There's ways you can manage it, right? Like for example, I don't know why, but in 1985, I wrote a Lotus solution that was data-centric. It was tables that I imported, file, combine, bringing them in and sending them back out. I have one guy who still uses that. 25 years later, he has a computer in the corner running Lotus 1-2-3, and he uses it to run his business, and because nobody's ever built anything that does the same thing. So yeah. I'm the biggest fan of the data capabilities of Excel now, but not for data input if you can avoid it. But if you have to do it, I can do it.
Right.
You can do it.
The last question: when you said that relatively small amounts of data that Excel can have, what do you call small?
Oh, a few hundred. Few hundred actually may be too big in a lot of cases. Like and I know that flies in the face of what a lot of people are doing with it. And one of the other problems is you can't get access to a database. I just went through that with one major Canadian bank in the last 2 days, talking about a solution that we're thinking of building. And the argument was, well, we got to do it in Excel because that's the only tool we have available to us, right? And I can do that. I told them I can do that. And now they're thinking about it. I don't like having to do it, but I can do it. It'll cost them more in a way because, here's the thing. When you start with Excel, you have everything, and then you have to work really hard to control everything. When you start with Access or Visual Studios, you start with nothing, and then you add what you want. This is the biggest problem with Excel. Everything is right there in front of you. and the users can screw anything up they want innocently, right? Mm-hmm. I build solutions, and we all should target building Excel solutions that can be used with people who don't know Excel. That's how businesses will get value out of this technology. And that every month will roll over, or every quarter will roll over automatically, so they don't have to, like I said, call me every time they want to change something. And we would sell, ironically, an awful lot of licenses of Office 365 doing that.
I do think that you're right about one thing. Excel is one big piece of paper, and everybody's got a crayon. They control
That's right. That's right. But it's a smart crayon, a smart piece of paper, and it's underutilized. You know what Excel is? It's like a 747 sitting in your driveway, and everybody gets in it and goes zoom, 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 zoom. That's right. That's what's happening. Excel is so much more capable than anybody gives it credit for. Some very, very, very smart guys built a lot of capability into that product. You just think about what's in that product. They believe that it was more than just a piece of paper.
Yeah, and I challenge my peers to speak up when people start beating on Excel, and
Amen.
they don't know what Excel is doing. They don't know.
And yet that doesn't stop them from having. That doesn't stop them from having an opinion. That's another thing that makes me mad. Is that in the old days, people would ask me, "Can you do this for me? I have a business process. Here's my business process," and I would go build a solution. Nowadays, they all tell you how they want it done. They all, they all have opinions on how spreadsheets work. Like you said, there's the old traditional style with formulas and lookups and stuff. And then there's a whole new data-driven version of Excel, which is so much better, so much more capable, so much more powerful, produces exactly the same results, but in a good way. But you try showing that to people, and it's like a deer in the headlights. They go, I don't understand. And again, that's like, ooh. And that's where I get the problem, is that the message hasn't been properly